The international order of nations changed after the First World War. The Allies had defeated Germany and the Central Powers in the war. When Imperial Germany was defeated, a National Assembly met at Weimar. They formed a democratic constitution with elected deputies and equal voting rights for men and women. The Weimar Republic was forced to accept the humiliating terms of a peace treaty with the Allies called the Treaty of Versailles. As part of the treaty, Germany lost its overseas colonies, 13% of its territories, 1/10 of its population, 75% of its iron, and 26% of its coal. The Allied powers forced Germany to demilitarize. As a result, Germany became weak. Under the War Guilt Clause, Germany was held responsible for the damages of war and was forced to pay compensation of £6 billion. Unfortunately, since the newly formed Weimar Republic signed the treaty, it was held responsible for all the misery that followed. While socialists, Catholics and Democrats supported the Weimar Republic, the conservatives condemned these supporters and called them November criminals. This was because the Weimar Republic signed the armistice that ended the First World War in the November of 1918. Thus, in essence, the Weimar Republic was blamed for the after effects of a war it did not start. Another factor that contributed to the fall of the Weimar Republic was the revolutionary uprising of the Spartacist League, which was similar to Russia's Bolshevik Revolution. The Spartacists later founded the Communist Party of Germany, which held radically different ideals from those held by the Weimar Republic. This kind of divisiveness further weakened the Weimar Republic. Internally too, it became difficult for any one party to achieve a majority in the Weimar Republic, and this gave rise to rule by coalitions. People lost all confidence in the democratic parliamentary system, and widespread discontent created the backdrop for Hitler's rise to power. Adolf Hitler, the very name synonymous with power and might, had his destiny shaped by the early experiences in his life. Born in 1889 in a small village in Austria, Hitler's early days were anything but extraordinary. They were marked with poverty and struggle. Hitler wanted to be an artist, but on his father's insistence, he took up technical education, causing him to become rebellious at school. His next few years were spent penniless in the streets of Vienna as he struggled to pursue his dream of being a painter. However, enrolling for the German army during the First World War ignited in him a spirit of patriotism. He was twice recognized with the Iron Cross Medal for his bravery at the war front. Germany's defeat in the First World War and the unfair Versailles Treaty that followed infuriated Hitler. Carrying the angst, in 1919, he joined the German Workers' Party, but soon took over and renamed it the National Socialist German Workers' Party. This popularly came to be known as the Nazi Party. The Nazi ideology, as propagated by Hitler, was based on a racial hierarchy that considered the German Aryans to be superior to the Jews. Soon, under Hitler's leadership, the Nazi Party rose in significance, but it still failed to garner popular support. Hitler made a failed attempt to seize control of Bavaria in 1923, for which he was arrested and even tried for treason, though he was released later. It was during this period of imprisonment that he wrote Mein Kampf, that inspired German militarism and gave insights into his political ideology. Hitler had caught the imagination of the young German minds, promising them a Germany free of foreign influences. Hitler was seen as a messiah who would deliver people from all the ills prevalent in those times. Hitler's power compelled an initially hesitant President Hindenburg to offer him the chancellorship, the highest position in the cabinet of ministers. Very soon, Hitler took advantage of the situation when a mysterious fire broke out in the German parliament building and assumed greater control. He used his powers to send opponents such as communists to inhuman concentration camps, shut down trade unions, and banned all political parties except his own. Within a month, Hitler also ensured that the Enabling Act was passed on March 3, 1933. This act gave Hitler the powers to sideline the parliament and rule by decree. Thus, through powerful speeches and shrewd planning, Hitler finally established dictatorship in Germany. As a young boy, Adolf Hitler wanted to be an artist. No one could have predicted that, as an adult, this man would draw brutal lines of discrimination across Germany. Hitler's actions had roots in a set of beliefs and practices called Nazism. Nazis believed that some races were superior to others. Nordic German Aryans were perceived to be superior, while others like Jews were considered inferior. Nazis believed that German Aryans were pure and healthy and hence desirable. Jews and others were seen as undesirable. In general, people classified as the undesirable others included Jews, Gypsies, Blacks, Russians, and Poles. These other groups were portrayed as a threat to the purity of Aryans and were persecuted. Under the euthanasia program, Nazis also killed fellow Germans who appeared to be mentally or physically disabled. Children from undesirable groups were thrown out of German schools. Hitler also believed in the concept of Lebensraum, which means living space. New territories had to be conquered to enhance the power or living space of the German Aryans. Under Hitler, the Nazis occupied Poland and ethnic Germans began to drive the Poles out of their own homes. The Poles were herded in one cramped part of Poland called the General Government. The Nazis snatched away Polish children who looked like Aryans and got them examined by race experts. If the Polish children passed the race test, they would be raised in German families. If they failed, they were sent to orphanages where many of them died. The Jews suffered the most under the Nazis. From 1941, all Jews had to wear a yellow Star of David on their clothes. This mark was stamped on the legal documents and houses of the Jews. Under the Nuremberg Laws of Citizenship of 1935, Jews were no longer considered German citizens. They were removed from government service. Jewish businesses were boycotted and they were forced to sell their properties. Jews were forced to live in separate areas called ghettos in places like Lodz and Warsaw. They had to surrender all their wealth before entering a ghetto. Due to poverty and poor hygiene, diseases spread in the ghettos. Many Jews were packed into goods trains and sent to concentration camps and gas chambers. Others were forced to flee the country. Under Hitler, the Nazis were eventually responsible for the death of roughly 60 lakh Jews, 2 lakh Gypsies, 10 lakh Poles, and 70,000 mentally and physically disabled Germans.
Hitler strongly believed in imparting the Nazi ideology to children in order to create a strong German society. Let us look at some steps undertaken by him in this direction. Jew teachers were considered politically unreliable and hence were dismissed from school. Jew children were racially segregated and later thrown out of the schools along with the physically handicapped and the gypsies. This process of discrimination in schools was called as a cleansing or purification process. In school, the German children were groomed in the Nazi ideology of believing they were a superior race. All boys between the ages of 6 and 10 went through a preliminary training in Nazi ideology. At the end of the training, they had to take an oath of loyalty to Hitler. Textbooks were rewritten. Subjects underwent a big change, most affected being history and biology. History was based on the glory of Germany, while in biology, the racial superiority theory of the Germans was given priority. Children were taught to be loyal and submissive and worship Hitler. Stereotypes and hatred against the Jews was propagated. Children were encouraged to play sports. Did you know physical education became an important part of a school curriculum? Hitler believed that aggressive sports such as boxing improved children's strength and masculinity. Hence, boxing was made a compulsory sport. The essence of National Socialism was imparted to the youth through youth organizations. Deutsches Jungvolk, meaning German young people, was a youth organization for youth between the ages 10 and 14. Here they were indoctrinated with the Nazi ideology through sporting activities and parades. At the age of 14, they had to join the Nazi youth organizations like Hitler Youth. The recruits were trained in Nazi ideology and were taught to be aggressive, condemn democracy, worship wars, and develop hatred towards the undesirable Jews, communists, gypsies, and all those they had termed as undesirables. Hitler Youth was founded in 1922. To have complete control over the youth, other organizations apart from the Hitler Youth were banned in Germany once Hitler came to power. In 1933, its membership stood at 1 million members. By 1936, membership to Hitler Youth jumped up to 4 million members. After rigorous training, over 4 years, the Hitler Youth members had to join labor service at the age of 18. What was labor service? It was a compulsory service that men between 18 to 25 years of age had to fulfill before joining the military. On completion of the same, they had to serve in the armed forces and join a Nazi organization. Nazi ideology taught children that women were different from men and encouraged girls to become good mothers and give birth to pure-blooded Aryan children. Women had to stay at home, rear children, and preach Nazi ideology at home and not associate with other races. Honor crosses were given as rewards to women who produced more pure-blooded children. A bronze cross was given to women with 4 children, silver for 6, and gold for 8 or more children. Favorable treatment at hospitals and shops was shown to women who followed the Nazi code of conduct. Those who deviated from the code were severely punished. They were either publicly paraded with shaven heads, blackened faces with placards around the neck, or criminal sentences were served to them and their families. The Nazis used media and language very carefully to win support for their regime and popularize its worldview. Nazi ideas were spread through visual images, films, radio, posters, catchy slogans, and leaflets. The Nazis worked on the minds of the people and tapped their emotions carefully so as to turn their hatred and anger towards those that the Nazis considered undesirable. They made equal efforts to appeal to the different sections of the population, including laborers, women, and even families. The speech given by Hitler at the Nuremberg rally in September of 1934 is a good example to show how they appealed to the masses. They sought to win the support of the people by suggesting that Nazis alone could solve all their problems. Propaganda films were made to create hatred for Jews. The most infamous film was The Eternal Jew. Orthodox Jews were stereotyped and mocked. Jews were portrayed as rich money hoarders who committed crimes to get money. They even put the blame of the First World War on the Jews. The Nazis referred to the Jews as vermin, rats, and pests, and they compared their movements to those of rodents. The Nazis coined special terms to describe their activities. These terms were not only deceptive, but they had a chilling undertone. They never used the words kill or murder in their official communications, and they used different terms for different people. For example, mass killings were termed as special treatment, but when referring to Jews, it was called the final solution. While referring to the mass killing of the disabled, it was termed euthanasia. Some other words for mass killing were selection and disinfections. They used the term evacuation when deporting people to gas chambers. And gas chambers themselves were called disinfection areas. Hitler was a powerful speaker who understood the significance of rituals and spectacle in mass mobilization. Nazis held massive rallies and public meetings to demonstrate the support for Hitler and instill a sense of unity among the people. red banners with the swastika, the Nazi salute, and the ritualized rounds of applause after the speeches were all part of this spectacle of power. His passion and his words moved people. He promised to build a strong nation, undo the injustice of the Versailles Treaty, and restore the dignity of the German people. He promised to weed out all foreign influences and resist all foreign conspiracies against Germany. Nazi propaganda skillfully projected Hitler as a messiah, a savior, as someone who had arrived to deliver people from their distress. It is an image that captured the imagination of a people whose sense of dignity and pride had been shattered and who were living in a time of acute economic and political crisis.
The Diary of a Young Girl, also known as the Diary of Anne Frank, is a book made on her writings in her diary while she and her family were in hiding for 2 years to save themselves from the Nazis. It tells us of the unimaginable atrocities committed against the Jews and others under Hitler's regime. Accounts of people's sufferings during the Holocaust or the Nazi killing operations can be found in different memoirs, fiction, documentaries, poetry, memorials, and museums. Instances are available which talk of Jews who were desperate to survive these brutalities, just to tell the world of their sufferings. Information about the Holocaust spread across the world only after the war ended and Germany was defeated. The Nazi leaderships tried to burn all the evidence about their brutal acts after their defeat in the Second World War. Yet those who had suffered wanted the world to know what had happened under Nazi Germany. The sheer cruelty towards the Jews makes one wonder as to how do the common people in Germany feel about it. As Hitler rose to power, Germans were still nursing their wounds from World War I and the humiliation of the Treaty of Versailles. This led many Germans to agree with the Nazi view of the world. Many Germans hated the Jews and felt angry when they looked at them. They marked the houses of Jews and were quick to report anybody who they suspected to be a Jew. This was all done with the belief that Nazism would bring in prosperity and well-being for the Germans. There were some Germans who were anti-Nazism and organized protests and resistance against the Nazis. They had to face police oppression and even death for their disagreement. On the other hand, there was a large population of Germans who were passive onlookers and apathetic in their reaction to the organized crime against people. This reaction seems to stem from deep fear of the Nazis. We know about the atrocities suffered by the Jews and the fear and terror they must have lived under. But how do they feel about themselves? The Nazis not only inflicted physical torture, but also mental and psychological extremities on the Jews. As a result, the Jews themselves began to believe all the things that the Nazis propagated about them. Charlotte Barat, in her book Third Reach of Dreams, tells about the horrors experienced by the Jews as expressed in their dreams. They dreamt about their hooked noses, black hair and eyes. Jewish looks and body movements took on different connotations in their dreams. Their dreams were haunted by the images of themselves as publicized by the Nazis in the press. Although death was certain for Jews in the horrific gas chambers, yet many died much before reaching them because of the psychological torture. Effects of Nazism lasted till much after Hitler's death and end of World War II.